Welcome back to the SENWA studio out here at OPTUS Stadium. Going to be showers in the city today, a top of 21 degrees. But Freo CEO Simon Garlick doesn't have to worry about that. He's in beautiful, sunny, balmy, tropical Melbourne, getting ready for the big Gala Hall of Fame function tonight. He joins us on the show. Simon, welcome.
G'day, Mark. Thanks for having me on. You're being a bit ironic there. You saw the weather at the big freeze yesterday, didn't you?
I did.
About Melbourne.
Might have been warmer in the water, I think, than around the ground. It was pretty chilly.
Here for a couple of days. Can't wait to get back to Perth, mate. I don't know why anyone would live in this godforsaken place.
Well, we talk about home, away from home. You get an away game close to home this weekend with the game coming up against North Melbourne this weekend. How are things tracking for that? What are ticket sales looking like?
Yeah, it's a big weekend for us, Duff. On a number of fronts, clearly, back in after the bye, got a huge challenge on the field in chasing North, but really important one for us off the field, just given the amount of their work the club did in driving this outcome to have a 13th game in WA for both West Coast and Freo, and we saw the spectacle in Bunbury, which was great on the weekend, but for us this weekend, it's a massive opportunity for us to have another game at home, but also calling on our members and fans to turn out in force. So obviously we did the deal late last year, so weren't able to build it into our membership packages. So unfortunately, our members don't get this game included in their package, so they've got to get online, grab a ticket. At the moment, it's sort of heading towards a 30,000 crowd. We're very hopeful of building that up to 35 to 40,000. We're averaging a bit over 46,000 for our home games this year. Duff has us fourth in the comp, which is no mean feat, given we have very little away attendees. But if we can get somewhere in that mid to high 30s this week as the away team, it means not only do we cover our costs in underwriting the game for North Melbourne, but hopefully we can get a bit in front of that as well.
So tickets still available. What sort of pricing have you got on them, Simon, for this weekend, given you need to get the crowd there?
Yeah, not only tickets, but good seat stuff as well too. As I said, we're heading towards 30,000 as it stands at the moment. We're always thought that there'd be a late push during the week leading up to the game. The weather's looking pretty reasonable at 20 degrees without rain, so we're pleased about that. You can get tickets starting from $35 for adults, so and obviously cheaper for concessions and juniors. So obviously a cheap afternoon, and hopefully seeing the boys continue the form they had before the bye.
I think there was a similar game played in 2018 where Gold Coast sold a match to Fremantle, and that was played at OPTUS Stadium. I reckon 34,000 there that day. Now, we had the novelty of the new stadium at that point, but also Gold Coast obviously doesn't have many travelling fans, whereas North Melbourne might. So fingers crossed somewhere north of that, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. It's very achievable. As I said, I think we can certainly get to mid-30s. Hopefully, if we can head to the 40,000 mark, it makes it a really successful exercise. And we talked at the last home game to the members and fans that were there that, the reality is we want to show both, the AFL, but the football public that more content in WA is not only welcome from a footy man's state, but is something that's sustainable on a financial basis as well too. So looking forward to seeing as much purple as we can at an away game this weekend at OPTUS.
Do you know how many people travelled with North, Simon? Do you have any feedback on that as yet?
No, I haven't got the details yet. The government and North are working closely together to look at how many came over for the Bunbury game. We'll obviously get a far greater feel when ticket sales are confirmed later this week, but more likely next week when you do a bit of a review, because you can. The upside in not having it built in our membership package, we can see where match day ticket sales came from. So we'll have a really good assessment of it post game. This stage it's a bit hard to tell.
How is the club tracking at the bye, do you think? The on-field 7 and 5. Certainly there's been a strong rally in the last month after some scratchy form early in the season. What's your thoughts on how things are going?
Yeah, certainly more inconsistent than what we'd like, Duff. You touched on it, some pleasing and encouraging performances mixed in with some inconsistencies there, and a couple of really uncompetitive performances in the round one game against the Cats, but obviously the Saints game there as well too. I think since that game, really pleased with the response from the entire football department, driven by our on-field leaders in particular. We had a game against Collingwood where we played the style of footy we really want to play, and it was a strong performance without getting the ultimate result. But since then, I think we've seen a mature and tough brand of footy, and that's the challenge and focus for us. Looking at that purely against North Melbourne this week, if we can continue the way we played those games, and people I think are talking about the ball movement and the style of footy, but I think I was more impressed, and I know Justin is more intent on focusing on, the style of footy, a contested brand, making sure we defend as a team really effectively. And I actually thought it's probably our most mature and tough brand of footy that we've put together, certainly over this season. And the challenge for us, as we've seen this year with those inconsistencies, is making sure we deal with that on a week-to-week basis, which I know is the focus for this week.
Adam Simpson has a theory that Freo and their fans tend to eulogise the wins and catastrophise the losses. I was really impressed with Justin's messaging after the Gold Coast game, where he talked about just breaking it down to showing up every week and producing a strong performance. Has that been a whole of club view, or is that something Justin's taken it upon himself to make sure they're just focused in on week to week?
No, it's absolutely been a whole of club view. It's something we've looked at continuing to get better at over a couple of years. We clearly, can't and won't look to control what our fans and members do. It's their job to get, incredibly excited and enthusiastic and talk about things like flag mantle, and we won't discourage that at any stage from our members and fans. But our job inside the footy club is to make sure we focus on what the task is at hand. And we've actually, even developed an approach internally because, as you know, Duff, the way the modern media landscape works is that, what attracts clicks and forwards and likes online is sensationalist element. And if you win a game, you get pumped up more than you should. And if you lose a game, it can be, a terribly dramatic loss, and it's like the world's come to an end. And we can't afford to ride those highs and lows. It's an emotional game, so we understand that, after a game like the Gold Coast on the weekend, we want to enjoy it internally without going over the top, but you do celebrate together after a game and enjoy the playing ride home, and understand that it was a good win built off an incredibly strong performance during the week that led to that win. But by the same token, after a poor loss, we commiserate, but don't be down in dumps for 2 or 3 days as well too. So that's a real focus for us as a club. As I said, we can't control what happens on the outside, but we certainly do inside. So Justin's comments reflected an all-of-club approach, and is something that's, something we're going to be determined to continue on this year.
How's Justin tracking as a coach, do you think? I think you mentioned the performance against Gold Coast as being one of the strongest performances you've seen for this season. How's he going, you reckon?
Yeah, really well. I've said numerous times, our belief in Justin is really strong, but I think it really extends more broadly to his coaching group and our football department overall. Understandably, in our world, in reality, the coaches really, often get a significant amount of credit after a win, but also cop all the heat and the blame after a poor loss or a run of poor form. And again, we don't tend to look at it in that manner. We look at it as a whole of club, but more specifically a football department approach, both players, support staff, and our coaching group. And I think they've had a great month. It was clearly a disappointing loss against St Kilda. The way he and his coaching staff, as I said, along with the playing group and support staff, reviewed that game, worked on understanding what was it that went wrong on that night, and then bounced back from that has been really impressive. So we're pleased with that. But as I think Jordan Clark was quoted as saying recently, we haven't achieved anything yet. It's a month of solid footy, only with 3 wins, mind you, and that doesn't guarantee you anything over the course of a long year. So the focus is squarely on North Melbourne this week. Preparation going into that has just been as solid and as strong as it has been in the previous month or so. So we're hoping that holds us in good stead against a team that's really going to throw some challenges at us.
Your form after the bye hasn't been great in recent seasons either. How do you do anything specifically to address that, or do you just trust that the players, as they get older and more mature, will take care of business?
Yeah, I think, like Justin said, we look at things specifically towards a week. We had a couple of really poor. We've been a pretty decent travelling team over the last couple of years, and then we had really uncompetitive loss against Geelong, as I mentioned, and the same against St Kilda. So we then look to change up a few minor things, Duff, so it's certainly not throwing things out, and we're well aware that we haven't performed in the manner we'd like after buys, certainly from a loss perspective. So, there's bits and pieces about how we might train and the time we might do things and things here and there, but there's nothing substantive. We trust the process that the players have, and the coaching staff and the football department have gone through in previous weeks largely. But there might be a couple of tweaks here and there, but nothing substantive.
Two players that have been the subject of trade speculation. Luke Jackson, obviously, with Max Gawn making some utterances on radio that maybe were not required. Also, Neil Erasmus in the West Australian Today suggesting that he will be a target for West Coast. How confident are you can retain all your players and retain list stability at the end of the season?
Yeah, to borrow an infamous line from Will Smith, Duff, I think Melbourne should take our player's name out of their mouth. Hearing the captain and coach speak, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, hearing the captain and coach speak specifically of Luke was really disappointing. It's not a practice that we engage in, but, that's their prerogative. Luke's had the season he's had on field. I think everyone's seen that. I think he's in phenomenal form. He's an unbelievable character around the footy club, just in terms of his enthusiasm, his infectious nature. He's a great teammate. And we just love having him a part of the club. He's clearly signed for a long period of time. He loves the footy club. And you can see that in both his actions and his words. So it's not even a consideration for us. He's going to form part of our midfield in a variety of roles, given his flexibility and his capability, and I think he's just scratching the surface of that too, which is highly exciting for us and our fans. So he's a cornerstone of our club for a long time to come, and Raz has had a really good month. I think it's coincided with the team. Obviously he's understandably wanted more opportunities and been doing a phenomenal job at the next level down at Peel for a long period of time, and just been banging on the door. And when the opportunities arisen in the last 3 weeks in particular, he's really stepped up and been a hugely solid contributor to our midfield. So the ultimate professional, understand the speculation that will occur. Raz is out of contract, but we see him again as a really important part of our midfield. People forget he's 21 too, Duff. So he's really at the start of his career. I mentioned his professionalism second to none, and we see him being a huge part of our football club and helping us to achieve the goals that we wanted for a significant period of time.
Significant appointment or reappointment made by the club over the last week or so. Lisa Webb continues as your AFLW coach. Tell us about Lisa and the significance of that appointment.
Yeah, I think Lisa goes under the radar a little bit from a code perspective, given we're over in Western Australia a little bit, and, Daisy's got a really high profile and is a great coach in her own right, but internally, we understand the value she provides. She's a great coach from a technical perspective, which clearly is a minimum requirement. But I think what she provides in terms of a contemporary approach from connection with her players, being able to build a program that's aligned and unified, being able to sell a vision, and really build an overarching environment is incredibly strong. And her and Claire Heffernan as our AFLW head of AFLW are really building that type of program that we think can contend on a sustained basis. So we're ecstatic to extend Webby, as was announced during the week. I think she's got huge growth potential, even though she's doing a great job as it is at the moment. Really pleased to have a couple of our established guns and stars back on the track in pre-season, and really looking forward to the year that comes from an AFLW perspective. And having that, I think, solid platform of Webby as our senior coach locked away will only help us in that sense.
Okay, Simon, thanks for joining us on the show today, mate. One more time before I let you go, where can your members and supporters get their tickets for the game against North Melbourne on Saturday night, given it's outside the membership package?
Yeah, jump online, Duff, on our website, Ticketek. Tickets starting from $35, as I said. Really need to turn an away game at OPTUS into a purple fortress. I think there's a huge focus on public transport. The Fernley-Coburn line's opening too, Duff, and if you didn't know, it's actually purple, which is ironic. But, fans from the south of Perth can get to the game in an easier fashion now. We can't wait to see as many people as we can there, so get online and grab a ticket today.
Enjoy sunny Melbourne, mate. We'll have you back in the rainy, bleak city of Perth sooner than you think. And thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me on, Duff.
Simon Garlick, the CEO of the Fremantle Dockers. 0487 736 736 is the Harvey Norman Busselton text line. The Barrett and Dado open line 13 12 55. We'll be back with more after the break.